You're listening to the Baumbastic Podcast with Andrew Ellis on Inside Arkansas.
What's going on, everybody, and welcome to the Baumbastic Podcast live chat edition. I've been hyping this up for weeks now. I've been saying we're going to do a live show. But we are here. Arkansas just got done with their first scrimmage, their first official practice of the 2025 baseball season. We got real takeaways to talk about. We got real action to dive deep into. We'll kind of let everybody get in the chat, get all settled, get your beer, get your whatever you've got going on for your Friday night, get tapped in, get ready to roll. Basically, what I'm going to do is give you guys just a rundown, play-by-play of everything. I mean, I'm sure some of you that are really the diehards, the sickos, have been looking for updates on the internet, looking for tweets, whatever you can, or you followed along in the Discord thread. Shout out to the Dixon Street Discord. But we're basically just going to go through a little bit of a rundown of kind of inning by inning. It was a 6-inning scrimmage, basically 5.5 innings because it's just the top half. And so not like a ton of crazy groundbreaking developments, but the gray team did win 4-1 for those that were wondering. So we'll dive into a little bit of what happened, the action, how the runs were scored, who all threw, how they looked, and we'll just kind of talk about it as we go. But of course, this is live, so I'll be chatting with you guys throughout. If you've got any questions about today's action, just the team, baseball, life, whatever. Hell, we can talk basketball, guy, if you guys want to. Whatever it is, we will be tapped in. We will talk about it all. We're here to hang out. Appreciate everybody for being here on your Friday night. I was a little bit worried. I was like, man, I don't know if anybody's going to be rocking with this, but we will see. So let's just dive right into it real quick. Before I start talking about the rundown, I do want to just say they kind of loaded up the lineups. We'll pull them up here in a second, but they basically loaded up the lineups. Actually, matter of fact, let me go ahead and throw the stats. I didn't realize the U of A was going to put out an official box score. I went home, I sprinted home, got everything set up, and started kind of typing up the stats because I have the play-by-play, the rundown here, but I was like, I kind of want to have like a stat sheet, like a box score. And then as soon as I got done tallying it all up and, counting strikeouts, hits, all that, getting everybody's numbers, the U of A emails us and they're like, here's the box score from today's game. I'm not using their box score. I'm using mine because it didn't take me that long, but I was like, since I did the work, but let's see if I can pull it up here. Okay. So this was the gray lineup. And you see the numbers there. So spoiler alert for this action I'm about to run down here. But if you look at it and you look at it pretty closely, it actually kind of looks like what you might expect the starting lineup to look like. Now, first thing is there's only 8 names here. There is not a DH on this team. I don't know why they decided to do that. The red team or the Cardinal team had 10 guys. They had 2 DHs there. So just kind of the way they wanted to do it. They wanted to get some guys some defensive work. The one name missing, if you're like looking at your projected starting lineup, would be Kendall Diggs, and we will get to him in a minute because he was on the Cardinal team, kind of the B team, if you will, and he was playing first base, which we did not expect to see, but I guess he's just one of the many guys they've been trying out over there. But again, you just kind of look at it. This kind of looks like a lot of the guys we know for sure are going to start, like your Vahiva Aloy or your Brent Iredale, or in my opinion, your Nolan Souza, your Ryder Helfrich, even a Rocco Pepe, like those guys that we've talked about religiously as starters. All of them are in this lineup. Charles Davlin, of course, there at the top of the center field. And we'll talk about how each guy looked and all that. But that kind of, that was an interesting takeaway early, is that they basically loaded up all the starters on one team. And they've done that before. They like to do that just to kind of see what happens. Luckily for them, the starting lineup did win. It wasn't a high scoring game, only 4-1. But the starting lineup did win, and they do that. And I just thought that was interesting. And so get a little bit of a look to see how we kind of where things are at as we enter just the final few weeks here, the preseason, as we launch into the full season here. So again, let's just dive right into it. Again, it was freezing cold, and there was a lot of very big time arms. Like a lot of the top arms were throwing. So that kind of led to the low scoring affair here. But Gabe Gackle gets to start on the mound for the gray team, and he's facing again the non-starting lineup there. The first guy he faces is Brenton Clark, the freshman outfielder who's had a really, really productive offseason, I would say. Was kind of like one of the stories of the fall, if you ask me. Really lit it up. I think he hit a little over 300, maybe like 350 or something like that. Showed off some pop, showed off some speed. He was playing center field for his team today. Been really impressive. And he started the game with a really impressive at-bat against Gabe Gackle, works a walk, and then gets picked off immediately. So not great. I kind of caught him leaning a little bit. I think he was going to try and steal there. So he works the walk, gets picked off, Cam Kozel strikes out. Zane Becker strikes out. Inning over for Gabe Gackle. In the bottom of the first, Gage Wood got the start for the other team, for the Cardinal team, which, again, I think that's a little bit interesting. You know, we've been talking about this starting rotation for a while. We kind of feel like we know the four guys that are in that mix with Gabe Gackle, Zach Root, Landon Beidelshees, and Gage Wood. I had someone today at Alumni Hall actually ask me, he said, do you think Dave is kind of sending a message by putting Gage Wood there as a starter? Honestly, man, if you go off of the fall, Gage Wood deserves that. He pitched as well as anybody in the fall, and Gabe Gackle, of course, is the guy that we've all kind of penciled in as the Friday night starter, and we put a lot on his plate. But I thought it was cool to see Gage Wood get the ball, and his first inning of work, strikes out Charles Davalon looking, just paints a beautiful breaking ball on the inner edge. It was one of those where Davalon just was clearly looking heater, looking something else, and then when he got fooled a little bit, like he was one of those, he started walking out of the batter's box before the pitch was even caught, before the umpire made the call. Gets a soft ground out from Logan Maxwell after that, and then a pop up from Vahiva Aloy. I think it was like 7-8 pitches for Gage Wood there in that first inning. Not a ton going on, but good to see him start off well, look good. And then in the top of the second, Gackle comes out for another inning of work. Each starter went 2 innings, and Gackle just gets 3 quick ground outs. One from Kendall Diggs right back to him. Kahio Aloy hits a ground ball to Brent Iredale, and then Gabe Frazier, who another freshman, we'll touch on him in a moment. He had a big moment in this scrimmage, had a good at-bat there, but Gackle with 3 fairly softly hit ground balls, no real action there for him in the second inning of work. Once he settled in, he was really good. I mean, he only faced 6 hitters total, basically got them all out because he picked off the one guy that he walked. That's what you want to see out of the guy that you're expecting to be your Friday night starter, the guy you're kind of expecting to step up into that next stratosphere as a sophomore after a really good freshman season. So good to see from Gackle. No real drama with his outing today. Bottom of the second for Gage Wood. That's when we got our first run of the game. So Brent Iredale, the Aussie third baseman, who's been kind of a big story of the offseason, also had a really good fall. He works a walk, and it was a pretty back and forth at bat. I think he had to foul off a couple pitches, finally gets there. And then everyone that's been asking for that small ball, been saying, man, is this team going to be a little bit different? Going to run the bases, going to maybe mix it up a little bit? Like, well, what's going to be going on here? You'll love this. Nolan Souza is at the plate. And again, this is leading off the second inning against Gage Wood, a strike thrower, mind you. Brent Iredale works a walk after a good at-bat. Nolan Souza executes a hit and run flawlessly. I would say maybe not flawlessly, because you really want, when you're going to go on a hit and run, trying to go opposite field a little bit, basically hit it where when the shortstop goes over the field for a left-handed hitter, which Nolan Souza obviously is. You're thinking shortstop goes to cover second on the steal. You hit it right behind him. He kind of pulled his through the right-hand side of the infield, but it worked out perfectly. The second baseman was nowhere even close to make the play. Pretty hard hit ball. So Arkansas ends up first and third, 0 out right off the bat against Gage Wood, who again has been pitching really well, pitched well in the first inning, pitched well all fall. Wood bounces back, gets Rocco Pepe to strike out on an elevated heater. And it was one of those spots, first and third, nobody out. As a pitcher, you kind of know you need a punch out at some point. You know, you're maybe even 2. And so you're getting like really good stuff. He was able to get ahead of Pepe really quickly and put him away with the heater elevated. Really just a good battle between two good competitors there. Then Ryder Helfrich drives home the first run of the game with I put it down as an F7. You could make an argument for L7. It was a pretty well hit ball to left field, but just right at the left fielder. Ends up being a sacrifice fly. Gray gets on the board 1-0. And then Justin Thomas flies out to center field, hit that ball pretty well. He had a good day at the office, I would say, at least at the plate. So good to see from him. The first relief pitcher for the Gray team was Dylan Carter. He comes in, gets 2 quick ground balls, both of which were fielded by Vahiva Aloy from Michael Anderson and Reese Robinette. The one that Robinette hit was like a slow roller up the middle, and I think Vahiva ended up fielding it on like the second base side of the second base bag, but Nolan Souza against the left-handed hitter was obviously playing deep in the hole there in right field, basically. So Vahiva had to cover a lot of ground. I'll tell you about this about Vahiva. Not the smoothest athlete Arkansas's ever had at shortstop. Like, no one's ever going to confuse him for Jalen Battles. And he's a good athlete, but not like, he's not one of those guys that makes it look easy. You say that about a lot of shortstops. Vahiva doesn't necessarily make it look easy, but he kind of makes every play you need him to make. It's very weird. And like on this is a prime example of it because he had to cover some ground, kind of coming in to field a softly hit ground ball in front of the bag, second base, like a really tough play. And he made it look tough. But it's, one of those plays that a lesser shortstop probably isn't able to get to, and not like Reese Robinette's like the fastest runner of all time. But it was a pretty nice play there. And then Carter strikes out Elliot Peterson to end his inning. He looked really good in his first inning of work. Bottom three, Tate McGuire gets the ball. And Tate McGuire has been a guy that I've listed as an X factor. He's had a really productive offseason as well. This is the guy who pitched about 2 innings as a freshman last year, was a pretty highly recruited guy. But then just kind of wasn't super consistent, wasn't great in his 2 outings that he got early in last season, and just kind of got lost in the shuffle as a true freshman. Really good pitching staff, a lot of veterans. It happens. So redshirting, but like basically like he wasn't on the travel roster in SEC play, basically got just like a redshirt, a season to kind of adjust to college baseball. He goes out to the Cape, has a really, really good summer, was a starting pitcher there, had some really promising outings, got some good experience, carried it into the fall pretty well, was pretty solid in the fall for the most part. So it was good to see him go out there today. He gets a quick fly ball out from Charles Davalon, which Tyler Holland, by the way, if there's an MVP of the scrimmage or maybe just like a most notable player of the scrimmage, Tyler Holland, true freshman, we have not talked about. He's kind of the Shohei Ohtani of Arkansas baseball as a freshman, can play some shortstop, can play some outfield, could play some first base, pitches also. He's a really good fielder, really good, versatile athlete in the field, and not a bad pitcher. Got a pretty good arm, obviously. And he also had 2 hits today. So we'll touch on him in a little bit. But he made a really nice play in foul ground on this Davalon fly out that I think was in foul territory. 2 strikes, just kind of defensive, skies 1-2 opposite field. And Holland had to cover a good bit of ground, goes out there and makes the play. And then McGuire strikes out Maxwell, strikes out Vahiva Aloy looking. That's literally the 1, 2, and 3 of the starting lineup. McGuire makes quick work of them, so really good to see. Things got a little bit weird for Dylan Carter in the top of the 4th. I mentioned Tyler Holland, who, again, kind of had a lot of moments in this scrimmage, and we'll touch on him. So he has an infield single, just kind of up the middle, tough play. Vahiva was able to kind of knock it down, but it was just a base hit, not a super hardly hit ball, but kind of hit in the right spot. So he gets on base with an infield single, and we're talking about a freshman who's kind of trying to make his way, trying to establish himself on this roster. And, nice little moment. Gets picked off, and this elicited a very hearty "what the hell" out of Dave Van Horn. Like as soon as the pickoff went over to first base, he just says, "What the hell?" And it was so funny. And like so, as he's coming back to the dugout, Nate Thompson and DVH obviously give him a little bit of an earful. Nate Thompson kind of had to talk through the situation with him, but it was just a really funny moment in the scrimmage. And by the way, they treated this scrimmage as if it were like a legitimate baseball game. Like it was a lot of times you go out to these games and there's, they'll throw a runner on first. There'll be like a ghost runner, or maybe they'll have 2 outs and they're like, let's call this inning. They'll it's a very laxed environment, and like they're not really playing it like a real game. Hell, they'll usually have like a little tent set up and you'll have Matt Hobbs and all his analysts and stuff sitting back there looking at the track man, really diving into whatever the pitcher's doing. They treated it like a real game. So if you got picked off, you got picked off. Like that was an out. You were off the base paths. Whereas like in the fall, you'd have a guy that would try and steal. And if he got caught stealing, they'd send him back to first. And so it's like, you never really knew how many outs there were. They treated it like it was a somewhat real game, which I actually appreciated. So Holland has the leadoff single, gets picked off. Brenton Clark, really good at bat. I believe it was 2 strikes, had to foul off a couple, just kept fighting, eventually pokes a base hit through the right side. Then there was a play, Cam Kojal grounds one up the middle. I texted my boy Danny Shee, who's my trusted ally, my trusted source for everything. And I was like, what are we going with that? Is that a base hit? Was it an E6? Was it an E4? It was kind of hit right at the bag in second base, maybe a little bit behind it, just a dribbler up the middle. And I couldn't see. I didn't have a great, I honestly wasn't super. I was kind of typing, doing whatever, and I kind of looked up, didn't get a great look at it. I couldn't tell if Vahiva got to it and could have made a play, or if Souza got to it. Like when I looked up, they were just kind of there, and the ball was in between them. And so they ended up going with a base hit per the official. And that's what I went with as well. So we went with the infield single. So you have 3 base hits to start the inning, 2 of which were infield singles, but you had a picked off runner. So it's first and second, 1 out. And then Carter bounces back, gets Zane Becker to strike out, and gets Kendall Diggs to pop out to third base. Kendall Diggs, when he popped out, got a fastball that was pretty hittable, and it was like a 2-1 count, and he was just kind of late on it, just kind of missed it, pops it up, and he yelled an expletive. He yelled a bad word. He did an oopsie. He needs to clean his mouth out with soap. But that was kind of how that inning ended. So pretty good stuff from Dylan Carter, who goes 2 innings. And the runs come here in the bottom of the fourth. Brent Iredale gets struck out on 3 pitches by Steele Eaves, true freshman, right-handed pitcher. And then after that, Souza with a really good at-bat, works a walk, steals a base, and then Rocco Pepe just goes down and gets a breaking ball, golfs it out to left field into the bullpen. Wasn't like mashed. It was probably 360, 370, like in that range. I did not have TrackMan or anything access to that, so I don't know. Can't tell you an exit velo or any of that. But it was a pretty well hit ball. And I mean, you kind of knew it was gone. But in today, it wasn't a super offensive day at the park. It wasn't like the ball was carrying necessarily. So maybe on a different day, it would have gotten a little bit further. But it was a solid home run from Rocco Pepe. Good stuff from him, and making up for his strikeout earlier when he struck out with runners at first and third. So that puts Gray up 3-0. And I said they treated this like a real game. This next situation is the only example where they didn't. Ryder Helfrich's up to bat. He gets hit by a pitch, and Nolan Souza came in and ran for him, and then immediately advances to second on a pass ball, and then stole third, just kind of caught the pitcher, not really paying attention, was able to steal third. So good stuff from Nolan Souza. And so he gets to third base with 1 out. And then Ryder Helfrich, who stayed in to hit, basically drove himself in because he put himself on with a hit by pitch, but stayed in to hit. Ends up getting his second sac fly RBI of the day. Almost the exact same situation as his last one. This one was weird, though, because Gabe Frazier, who, again, I'll talk about Gabe Frazier in a second because he had a big swing, was playing left field for probably the first time in his life. He's a shortstop, and he's a damn good shortstop. But Tyler Holland, who I just mentioned, the two-way guy, also, they were rotating at like shortstop left field like every inning. And so Gabe Frazier was out there, actually didn't catch the ball, but DVH was like, he's out. We're not calling that was a sac fly. It should have been caught. We're calling it a sac fly. And so right after that, I was noticing at this point, I'm like, wait a minute, that's Gabe Frazier in left field. What the hell? Right as I'm kind of noticing this, Justin Thomas, the transfer from Florida Southwest JUCO, started his career at Georgia, just smokes a triple off the wall. I don't know if Frazier could have made the play or not. It would have probably taken a really good effort, but I just felt bad because it bounces off the wall and bounces weird. And so just felt bad for the kid. And when he got back to the dugout, DVH actually looked to him and said, "This is a humbling game, isn't it, Gabe?" She just kind of, just giving him some grief a little bit. And then Charles Davalon flies out to right field. This is actually another funny moment because Davalon hits it. And I don't remember who, I guess it was Cahillo. It was Cahillo Aloy, actually, that was playing right field, which I'm just kind of dropping some little nuggets in here that are kind of noteworthy, and we'll talk about them all when we kind of gather once I'm through this rundown. But Cahillo Aloy runs back, and the way that he ran back to the fence, you would have thought this ball was hit 430 feet, and it was hit well, but then he ended up having to come in and ended up catching it down by his waist. So you could tell it's kind of his first time playing right field as well. And as he was doing it, Kendall Diggs is in the dugout. He's like, "I'm telling you, it's hard. It's hard playing right field," which I thought was a nice little funny moment. So moving on here to the top of the fifth. I'm almost done with the rundown, I swear, guys. But into the top of the fifth, Aiden Jimenez gets the ball. This is the Oregon State right-hander who's coming off of, a serious injury. He was out all of last year for Oregon State, pitched a good bit as a freshman, and was a guy that apparently had a chance to be in their weekend rotation last year at Oregon State. He ends up going down for the year, misses all of his sophomore year. So now he's back at Arkansas, and I don't think any of us really knew what to expect or what his timeline would be like, but he's way, way ahead of schedule. So he's been able to throw, bullpens. He started facing live hitters a couple weeks ago. And so he gets on the mound and faces hitters for the first time in a while for him, and strikes out Cahillo Aloy to start, and then struck out Michael Anderson, struck out Reese Robinette in that same inning. But he did mix in a solo home run from Gabe Frazier, just absolutely mashed off the performance facility in right field. Again, when he hit it, we all knew it was gone. It was, I don't have a exit velo or a distance for you. He smashed it. And on a day where maybe the conditions were a little bit better, this might have been like a 400+ foot home run. Instead, it just kind of hits off the building. But when he first hit it, I was like, whoa, that's a shot. Gabe Frazier's good, man. I'm just telling you, the freshman from California can play shortstop. Like I'd say if Arkansas needed a shortstop tomorrow, like to play, if something happened to Vahiva Loy, I think Gabe Frazier would be a very real candidate to be that. I think he's a pretty good defender. He's long, rangy. He's very projectable. Like I really hope Arkansas is able to keep him around for a few years because I feel like that's a young piece worth investing in. And he's shown he can hit at this level. It's been really impressive to watch. And again, Jimenez looked really good in his inning, aside from the one pitch he threw to Gabe Frazier. So kind of good to see all the way around. That's like a perfect scrimmage inning where you feel good about the pitcher, you feel good about the hitters as well because you get a nice little knock from your freshman. That's what you want to see. Bottom five, won't take me long to go through this inning. Parker Coyle comes in to pitch, faces a lefty and Logan Maxwell, punch out looking, faces Vahiva Aloy, punch out, faces Brent Iredale, punch out looking. All she wrote. So good stuff from Parker Coyle, big time outing from him today. And then to close it out, the fireman, Christian Fauch, comes in and strikes out Elliot Peterson looking, gives up a double to Tyler Holland, the freshman two-way guy. I'm telling you, man, he had quite a day at the office, quite a loud and noteworthy day at the office. This is cool to see. He ends up getting stranded because Brenton Clark strikes out, Cam Kozel strikes out. And again, I was sitting right behind the dugout, like the third base dugout, which I guess is not Arkansas's actual dugout, but there was a lot of people there and the coaches were going back and forth. Brenton Clark, when he got done facing Christian Fauch where he struck out, and again, Brenton Clark had a good day, had a walk, had a base hit, didn't score a run because he got picked off, but had a nice day at the office and played some center field. He comes back to the dugout and he says, that's the nastiest pitch I've ever seen. He got called out check swinging at a splitter. He said, that's the nastiest pitch I've ever seen. He said, it looks like a left-handed curveball. Brenton Clark, left-handed swinging outfielder, facing Christian Fauch, a right-handed thrower. And he says that the splitter he threw looked like a left-handed curveball. So if you can I hope I did a good job detailing that. We're talking about a right-handed pitcher throwing to a left-handed hitter, and the pitch is like going so far down and away that it looked like a left-handed curveball. I had never heard it described that way. We've been hearing about Christian Fauch's splitter, and we've seen it a little bit in action, but it's kind of become this like mythical pitch at this point. So I thought that was cool to kind of hear that perspective from a left-handed hitter. And so I thought that was interesting. And so that ends the scrimmage. Cardinal team, or the gray team, ends the scrimmage up 4-1. It was a good day at the office. Let's take a look at the pitching stats real quick. So this is just the full pitching stats for everybody. Gabe Gackle goes 2 innings, Sharp 2 strikeouts. Dylan Carter 2 innings. The 3 hits look kind of sketchy. 2 of those were infield hits, so like not like the craziest thing in the world. And even Brenton Clark said he swung through the right side. Wasn't like it was 107 off the bat or anything like that. Dylan Carter did a good job battling out of some trouble. Got a huge pickoff that helped him out. Aiden Jimenez, of course, gives up the 1 run, but outside of that was nasty. Christian Fauch gives up the double. Outside of that was perfect. Good stuff from that team. That's 10 strikeouts in 6 innings of work for the gray team there. They brought out the big guns. Cardinal, Gage Wood. I feel like the line here is just very indicative of how Gage Wood pitched. Pretty good. 2 strikeouts, 2 innings, just the 1 run, a hit and a walk. Like it kind of played out how it needed to play out, honestly. And the 1 hit, I should clarify, was that was the hit and run with Nolan Souza. Not like it was absolutely smoked or anything. So pretty good stuff from Gage Wood. As a matter of fact, some of the hardest contact he gave up were the sac fly from Helfrich and the line out from Justin Thomas to center field. So pretty good stuff from Gage Wood overall. Like not much you can really take away from a 2-inning outing. But I thought he looked good. Stuff was sharp. Threw a ton of strikes. You'll live with it. Tate McGuire, really good. Love that. Parker Coyle, obviously, really good. Love that. Steele Lee's the freshman who's had some ups and downs like most freshmen do. I thought it was notable that they got him, that he pitched this early. Now, the team is going to scrimmage on Saturday and Sunday, but I thought it was kind of notable that he got the ball here in this situation. Just because, you look around a lot of the names that are thrown, these are a lot of veterans, dudes that have been around, dudes that Arkansas is expecting to contribute in a big way right there. So good to see Steele Eves kind of get that chance. And he was facing the starting lineup, and they picked on him just a little bit, nothing too crazy. But he did strike out Brent Iredale on 3 pitches. So love to see that. Let's see. We'll pull up and I pulled these up earlier. Here are the gray hitting stats again. The top 4 hitters, man, just tough sledding. So if there's a downside of today's scrimmage, something to be concerned about, I guess it would be that Arkansas's top hitters just did not show up. Brent Iredale drew a nice walk, ended up coming around to score a run. But nothing doing there. Vahiva had one at bat that I could tell he was really frustrated with. And I think the coaching staff was as well. He got up 3-1, and I believe this was against Tate McGuire. And then on the 3-1 pitch, he swings through a elevated heater that was honestly like a good foot above the zone. I think he got a little greedy there in the 3-1 count, and then ends up looking at a painted breaking ball for strike 3. I know that at-bat really kind of, probably annoyed him. Yeah, this is a guy that we've seen kind of be up and down, and his brother's kind of the same way. You just kind of live with it because he's going to have a 3-for-4 game with a double and a home run here soon, and we'll see how he hits the rest of the weekend. But good defense from Vahiva Aloy, but yeah, nothing doing at the plate. And the 2 transfer outfielders, Davalon and Maxwell, not great days at the office, honestly. Both these guys have proven enough, and they've had good off seasons here at Arkansas, so I'm not going to overreact too much, but I think you definitely, when you load up your starters and you put all kind of the starters on one team, you'd probably like to see a little bit more bombastic production, one could argue. So then looking at the Cardinal team's stats here, you see Brendan Clark with a good day, Cam Kojal had the infield single, and Gabe Frazier had the home run, and that was about it outside of Tyler Holland's 2 big hits, neither of which resulted in any runs. Kendall Diggs, is kind of the notable one here, hitting there in the middle of the order, playing first base. You could tell he's still kind of trying to get the feel. I'm sure, he's only been facing live hitting for like a week. So I don't know, where he's at in his recovery and his development. I didn't really get to see him throw at first base, obviously. And I think that's interesting, them playing him at first base. And so kind of resets, how we feel about this whole lineup and who might go where. You really might see a bunch of different combinations there at first base. Pepe looks solid. I mean, they didn't nothing was hit right at him, but I don't have any reason to believe that he's not like a reasonable option to start there. And again, we didn't see Kahio Aloy, Reese Robinette, or Michael Anderson at first base all day today. So kind of seems like first base is a spot they're going to try and get a big bat there. Pepe and Diggs obviously would fit that criteria. I'm a little surprised, honestly, that Brenton Clark isn't the outfielder they're considering. If they're going to try and make room for another outfielder, I feel like Brenton Clark kind of makes a lot of sense, but we'll see. I wonder what the lineup will look like tomorrow or on Sunday, just see who moves around, who does whatever. Yeah. But we're about 30 minutes in here. Let's hop into the chat and let's see what these folks have to say. Sorry, I've been ignoring you guys. I've been kind of scrambling to try and get this thing. I mean, I just left the scrimmage and just finished thawing out and everything. I was kind of trying to make sure I had all my ducks in a row before we went live here. But appreciate everybody for being here. Appreciate everybody for, again, spending your Friday night, man. This is awesome. Love that people are consuming baseball content on a Friday night during basketball season. Love to see that. And I'm looking forward to breaking down some real games with you. Shout out to Michael Kopeski, a legend in the chat. He says, let's kick some Sooner ass on Saturday. Okay. There you go. That's very good. Ethan says, ladies and gentlemen, baseball, thank you for your time. And he says, excuse the typo because that is not how you spell gentleman. But, it is what it is. Let's see. Yeah, Dalton Cook says Diggs on first. I think I like it. Yeah, it's weird. Like we've talked about this a little bit, and like early in the offseason, we kind of were like, wouldn't it kind of make sense to move Kendall Diggs to first base? But then they took so long to do it and moved other guys around. You have Big Country there, Aloy potentially there, Anderson there. And then when they mentioned Pepe the other day, I was like, okay, so like that makes sense. Like I can get behind that. Did not expect to see both of them there. So, it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out and see if Kendall actually ends up manning that spot. He did come to Arkansas as an infielder. So like wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if he ended up playing infield at Arkansas. But just another kind of wrinkle that they have to this lineup. And really, I think what you're seeing is this coaching staff kind of creating options for themselves to where, if you want to squeeze this guy in the lineup, all right, we'll move this guy here and that guy there. And so we're going to see no shortage of different combinations throughout the early part of the season. Lathan says Justin Thomas is a guy who I think many people probably haven't talked about enough. I think he will be a big player this year. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Justin Thomas got off to a slow start in the fall and kind of took his time to get going. But by the end of the fall, he was having some really good moments. There's some pop in that bat for sure. Is he a double-digit home run guy? I don't know. Who knows what he'll look like in a full season. I believe he hit 14 home runs last year at the JUCO level. Obviously, a really good athlete. Got some plus speed. Now this is where it gets into a hot take because I know DVH referenced him as a good defender the other day, but I kind of said a couple weeks ago that I feel like his defense is a question mark, and I still feel that way. At least at left field. Maybe it's just he doesn't know how to. Maybe it's just a new position on the corner there for him, and new park and all that. Obviously, a really good athlete, but there was another ball today that ended up getting falling down in foul ground. But I'm like, I don't know how he wasn't able to get to that. I don't mean, maybe he just got a late jump. Maybe he took a misstep or whatever, but I haven't seen the like awesome defense that was kind of supposed to be part of the package with Justin Thomas. But I'm actually at this point more intrigued with his bat than I am his glove, which is weird. I just never would have thought that would be the case. And of course, this was kind of on our radar after he made a couple errors in that Oklahoma State scrimmage or exhibition. So we'll see. I mean, we'll see if he ends up kind of cracking that everyday lineup. But yeah, I think it's definitely notable that he's in basically the starting lineup to start this spring practice. Now, of course, Kendall Diggs is still a guy that I would, in all likelihood, expect to be a starter, whether that's the outfield or first base. But he was like kind of the guy that was not with the main unit today. Kahio Aloy, obviously, of course, could be in there at DH. The starting lineup didn't even have a DH, which is kind of funny. So I guess really either one of those guys. And again, maybe I'm just crazy. I feel like if Arkansas is trying to create room for a starting outfielder, it probably needs to be Brenton Clark because he's been, if you're just going by the numbers, he's been the best hitting outfielder Arkansas has on the roster whether this offseason, whether it's fall, spring combined, nobody's hit more than him. I mean, he hit more than the top two starting guys in the top two lineup today. So that's kind of, it's kind of just where we're at here. Let's see. Ryan Bryant says Dave said it wasn't a called hit and run, just was a steal and Souza hit it. He brought it up in his post scrimmage interview. Gotcha. I did not stick around to hear from DVH. But yeah, love to see that. I mean, probably kills the small ball methodology we were going with, but no, I mean it's still cool to see. And look, Souza had 2 stolen bases today. I mentioned that one, or actually no, Souza's the one that hit it. Souza did have 2 stolen bases today, though, so he's a guy that I feel like puts pressure on opponents. And again, whether it was called or not, when you have a guy in action, and Iredale's another one that we were that was what we heard about him preseason, was they were surprised by how good of an athlete he is. And I've compared him to Caden Wallace a few times. Caden Wallace is a guy that stole 10, 12 bases for Arkansas back when he was here. So it's cool to see Brent Iredale drawing a leadoff walk and steal, or at least attempting to steal, threatening the defense, kind of forcing them to make a decision. Then Souza's able to take advantage of it. Pretty awesome. And then he said, Ryan Bryant followed up and said, Clark got picked off on the hit and run Cardinals in. Okay, so they had a called hit and run that did not come to fruition, and then a non-called hit and run that just kind of worked out perfectly. So interesting there. Interesting to hear that. But yeah, that is tough. DVH, honestly, I'm gonna be honest with you, was in a little bit of a foul mood. Now, obviously, when you have guys getting picked off during a hit and run, that'll definitely lead to a foul mood. And I mentioned him giving Tyler Holland a hard time. Understandable when you have guys getting picked off. He also was kind of annoyed. So in the last inning, top of the 6th, it's 4-1. And we had the double from Tyler Holland. Vahiva was kind of holding Holland on. And Dave just was like, hey, Vahiva, you have a 3-run lead. This is the last inning. You don't have to hold the guy on, which, like, obviously Dave is right. But I was like, it's also the 6th inning. Like, you never know with these scrimmages. You just never know how they approach it. But Dave was active and engaged in the dugout. Loved it. Love to hear that. Addison says, Pepe back healthy, ready to go. All indications are yes. We still don't really know for sure if his injury in the fall had anything to do with his move to first base. He hit a home run today, so I didn't really get to see him run the bases, and he struck out on the at-bat before that. So I didn't really I don't know if I really got to see him run and see like if there's anything weird there. But I mean, he's playing first base, active, engaged, loud. It was just good to see him back out there and contributing. Will he see any time in the outfield? Who knows? That I think that's going to be interesting to monitor, or if he's just like fully committed to being a first baseman. I mean, it makes sense if you're going to hit nukes. I mean, you saw the biceps the other day when he was wearing the jersey, man. I mean, he looks the part. But yeah, all indications are that he is at the very least on track to be fully healthy, and he played today, so I have no reason to believe he's not at least pretty healthy. Hey, Nomer, my guy, says, my only question is how many total losses will we have on our way to the national title? Maybe 2 or 3. Maybe they'll get a few scheduled losses out of there. Who knows? I mean, hell, hopefully they don't have to play any cold weather games, because clearly it doesn't seem like Arkansas baseball handles cold weather well. I know Vahiva and Nolan Souza from the island. I'm sure they don't love the cold weather, although Souza looked great today. Hagen Smith, of course, struggled in the cold last year. I mean, it might be Arkansas' kryptonite. Matthew Ward says, Tate McGuire continues to impress. Prime candidate to go be a big-time reliever this year. No, for sure. He's an interesting one. And I mentioned him. I did an episode titled, like, just X factors for Razorback pitching staff. And I mentioned him, Hunter Dietz, and Parker Coyle as well, a few other guys, where it's like, I don't really know what the role's going to be. We always kind of like to view it. We're all dumb idiots, so we have to like have it really broken down to us. Well, that's why I appreciate it when you have Friday night starter. Okay, I know what that means. Number 2 starter, number 3 starter, closer, even a setup guy. But then like there's a lot of innings in between. A lot of, whether it's Tuesday, Wednesday, throughout the weekend. And who knows what the starters, what the leash will be like. You would like to imagine your starters will be able to give you 5-6 innings every week. But as we all know, that's not always the case. And so Arkansas is going to need a ton of different guys to step up throughout the year. Tate McGuire, man, he just looks like a completely different, like more confident, more assertive, throwing a ton more strikes. Just looks like a completely different guy than he looked like this time last year. And I mean, the stuff's always been good. He's always been a mid-90s guy, like a 93, 95 mile an hour type of guy. He can even run it up in the 95, 96 range. I mean, he's got really good stuff. He mixes speeds. He's got a plus changeup. His changeup is intriguing to me. And it's kind of why I think he's a guy I wouldn't rule out being a future starter at some point in his career, just because of the way he pitches. He's got a very repeatable delivery, and he mixes speeds well. But I think he's gonna definitely take a massive step forward, and I look forward to seeing what his role ends up being, like how many high leverage innings he can end up commanding. Man, you got a lot of competition going on. You got a lot of competition going on for innings, man. I wouldn't. It's really tough in that pitching staff. Like Dylan Carter's another guy who threw really well today, through 2 innings. Like you would assume they're going to count on him, but it's like it's tough. They're going to have some really talented pitchers that are not going to get as many innings as we probably think. Leslie Byram, a legend here in the chat, says, I'm looking forward to this baseball season. I'm looking forward to when they play TCU, Michigan, and Kansas State here in a few weeks. I am too. Hopefully, I don't know if you're going, Leslie, but if you are, I'll try and see you there. Looking forward to that. Arkansas's got to get some revenge on some teams that put them out of the postseason the last couple of years. Some of their kryptonites. Love to see that. And our guy Hayden says should be out tomorrow or Sunday, both possibly. Yeah, well, I look forward to seeing you there, Hayden. I've seen him in a few. Hayden's a real ball watcher, ball knower, because I see him out at some of the scrimmages. And it's not a huge crowd usually, so it's like you can tell it's the real sickos out there. But if anybody is planning to come out to Baum-Walker Stadium the next couple of days, let me pull up this email so I'm making sure I'm not messing up the times here. So on Saturday, they will get started at 12:40 tomorrow. And then on Sunday, they will get started at 12:35. Don't know why the timing is 5 minutes off. I don't know if that was like a weather decision or what. They have not announced starting pitchers for that yet. For whatever reason, I'm assuming Zach Root, Landon Beidelshees would be next up, and then maybe Ben Bybee gets thrown in there. Maybe Cole Gibbler maybe gets thrown in there. Maybe Colin Fisher. I don't know if he's going to be able to ready throw yet, but we'll see who the starting pitchers are. They haven't announced them, but a lot of action for this team throughout the weekend. Can't wait to see what it all looks like. Come out to Baum and get an up close and personal look at it. It's really good stuff. Really good stuff. Let's see. Addison says he hopes Justin Thomas has a big preseason leading up to opening day. Yeah, Justin Thomas has kind of already started to carve out a role as like a fan favorite, which I appreciate. You can always like kind of tell. Just people seem to gravitate to him. It really started back in the draft last year. And I feel bad because I feel like I've been on like the other side of the Justin Thomas experience where I'm kind of like pumping the brakes every time people get excited about him. But that mostly dates back to the draft whenever people were lumping him and Iredale together as like, oh, we got these two huge JUCO prospects that turned down money. And I was like, well, not exactly. But yeah, Justin Thomas is a guy that I think the coaching staff clearly likes. They gave him a starting opportunity there against Oklahoma State. He was in the starting lineup here today. We'll see if that changes. But I mean, you can definitely tell they view him as a legitimate option and a guy that they've even clearly considered moving some things around. And so we'll see if he's able to make the most of it. But yeah, he's absolutely a factor in this outfield discussion, which I don't know if I necessarily would have predicted for you 3 or 4 months ago. Lane Hedge says, was there anybody who surprised you after the first scrimmage? I mean, Tyler Holland, frankly, that was a surprise today, mostly because all the cool things about Tyler Holland that we noticed in the fall, none of them included the bat. Like, he's a very intriguing guy, a two-way guy that's going to pitch and potentially hit, can play short, second, third, first, outfield now, apparently. So that's all intriguing to me, like particularly like the defensive versatility I really like. That's a good way to keep your way on the roster, on the main roster, but also like the 27-man roster. If you're trying to choose between guys, if you can pitch, play shortstop, and then potentially hit a double off the wall against Christian Fouch, like that's going to get you something. I actually think I overheard Matt Hobbs say that it was a cutter from Christian Fouch that Tyler Holland hit, and so like that's impressive stuff. I guess it was Dylan Carter and Christian Fouch, the two guys he got hits off of. Those are two veteran, experienced, proven arms, one of which is going to be a top pick in the draft. Like, I definitely did not think he was capable of that in the fall. And I don't remember what his final numbers ended up being, but he didn't have a ton of hits. And so I would definitely consider him a surprise. Outside of that, I would just say I'm surprised by Kendall Dix playing first base. And perhaps I'm a little surprised by Justin Thomas being in there with the starting lineup, but ultimately it kind of makes sense with the way that they're moving some guys around. Brandon with a mean comment here just says, let's just say this team makes it to the World Series. What is the over-under on them being able to catch a fly ball a few feet from first base? I don't think that's what over-under means. Like, I don't know how to answer what's the over-under on them being able to catch a fly ball. Like, it's kind of like, do you mean like the probability, like the percent chance? I don't know. But I mean, Rocco, that's another thing about this first base conundrum that they've got going. It's a big decision. You got to have someone that can catch that final fly ball. We didn't really get to see a ton. Like, I always feel bad whenever people ask for like defensive, and I know that's not what Brandon's just trolling here. I always feel bad when people will ask for like defensive takeaways from these scrimmages. Like Rocco Pepe, I'd love to tell you how he played at first base, but like, all I saw him do was catch balls that were thrown at him from other infielders. Like, I didn't really see him have to field a bunt, have to field anything crazy. He also didn't really have to pick anything. So it was just kind of one of those things. Ryan McDaniel says, would love to see Coyle take a step forward. Yeah, Coyle's an interesting guy. And, I touched on him in the X Factors podcast that I did. I don't think like the fans like are necessarily going to be like thrilled hearing his name and being like, oh, this is a guy that's going to pitch a lot for Arkansas, just because they've seen him. And if you look at the numbers, like, it's not like he's lit it up his first 2 years, but this is a guy that pitched a lot, got some starting opportunities as a freshman, even got a closing opportunity in SEC play. I believe he got a save against A&M as a true freshman. So like a guy that throws a ton of strikes and he's left-handed, that's a really good starting point. Like, just right there alone, that's a good start. And I think they clearly see something in him. That's why he's thrown like 50 plus innings in his first 2 years. Didn't have the sophomore year that I think he wanted to have, and that I think a lot of people kind of expected, because he had, he pitched a decent amount as a freshman, and it was like him, Bybee, and Fouch and Wood were kind of the four freshmen, and they each had moments, but none of them were able to really put it together. Then you saw Fouch take a massive step forward. You saw Wood take a step forward. I would even say Bybee took a step forward, and Coyle really didn't. I'm not trying to be hard on him, but like, it just didn't really pan out for him that way. I do think he's better this year. I think he's a guy that I said that in the fall. Like, people always say, when you say someone has good stuff, a lot of times you're thinking about, or you're likely in your head imagining like velocity, like a guy that's throwing 97, 98. Parker Coyle's breaking stuff is like high spin, big time stuff, especially against lefties. I think at the absolute very least, he's a guy that they're going to bring in to come get left-handed hitters out, which, like, when you're a lefty that throws 91, that's typically what your role ends up being, the guy that comes in and gets lefties. I mean, we saw Stone Hewlett do that very well. I think at the very least, you're looking at that. He could kind of fill that kind of Stone Hewlett role, throw about 15, 20 innings of high leverage, come get a guy out. But he's also a guy that throws enough strikes, mixed speeds enough. Like, I could see you stretching him out a little bit, being a nice little mid to long reliever. So it'll be interesting to see what his role ends up being. Again, he's another one that's kind of in this whole mix of the arms race. But he's definitely unequivocally better. His stuff's a little bit sharper, and he's just a little bit more confident for sure. So good to see him pitch well today. Addison says, some are saying Holland is the next Ohtani. Many are saying that. I definitely have been seeing that. That's definitely interesting. And Razorback Hobbs says, this isn't the first time Diggs has been at first in a scrimmage. Yeah, he played some first going back to like even his freshman year. He was playing because he came to Arkansas as a third baseman, or basically a corner infielder. And so, yeah, he bounced around a little bit. He was kind of in that mix with Caleb Cali going into the 2023 season, where it was like, oh, maybe he'll play third base because Caleb Cali's defense was a big question mark. Then quickly we realized, no, Caleb Cali can play third base. He's going to be fine there. Diggs played a lot of first base during that offseason. And then obviously, of course, moved to outfield throughout the season. So, yeah, it's not like a brand new thing for Diggs. It definitely wouldn't be the craziest thing in the world if he ended up being an infielder for Arkansas, because he came to Arkansas as an infielder. It's just not something I expected to see today on my way to the ballpark. And then, yeah, Hobbs follows up and says, I think Pepe is going to be at first when it's all said and done. Absolutely. I mean, I think there's no reason to not expect. I mean, it's kind of weird how things change. Like 2 weeks ago, Pepe at first hadn't even really entered my brain. And then DVH said it. I thought about it for about 90 seconds and I was like, okay, that makes sense. I'm with you. I think that Pepe is definitely the front runner at this point, especially with Kahio Aloy kind of working out at right field. And I also don't want to overreact too much and, just base everyone off of what they did and where they played in the first scrimmage of the spring here. But I definitely think Pepe checks a lot of boxes because he's a veteran. He's another guy that apparently started his career as an infielder. He's going to hit, so you don't really have to worry about it there. And then if he can just kind of do all the little things, the bunt coverages and, knowing where to be, knowing where to play, knowing the alignments and all that, which like this coaching staff has done year in and year out. They consistently find these guys that are able to play multiple positions. So I have no reason to be concerned. I had no reason to be concerned about Pepe at first base. And so until told otherwise, I think he's got to be viewed as the front runner. Ryan McDaniel says, got here late. Any news on Robinette? What do you mean news? You mean like, how did he play today? I believe he was, he was 0 for 2, ground out, strikeout. He did make a really nice play on I think it was Logan Maxwell that hit like a little tapper to the left side of the pitcher's mound, and Big Country had to come in and make a nice play coming in. I'm telling you, Big Country can play defense at third base. He's a better third baseman than he is a first baseman. And it does seem like he's kind of out of that first base race for the time being. So he's really just kind of the backup third baseman and a DH pinch hit option. But Robinette's the man, dude. Don't sell your Robinette stock just yet. The dude's awesome. Camo Hog says, feels like every time Souza gets on base, he's going to steal a base. Almost Enrique Bradfieldish. Obviously not that level, but you get the point. Yes, I would say emphasis on he is not quite that level, but yeah, Nolan Souza stole 13 of 14 bases in the fall. And then he added 2 today. So that's 15 stolen bases in 14 scrimmages. Like, it's not a ton. Like, they didn't play 50 games in the fall. They only played a couple weeks of action. So for him to be stealing bases at this high of a rate is pretty wild. I mean, we knew he was an athletic kid. And I believe I don't know what he had stolen bases last year, maybe 3 or 4. We kind of saw some capability, but he's gone to a different level, man. Just as an athlete overall, he's another one that just is so much more confident, composed, under control. Like, really looks like he's taken like that kind of step that you expect guys to take as sophomores. Really encouraged by just the way he looked at the plate. Played some good second base as well. Made a couple nice plays. Really, really, really encouraged with Nolan Souza. That's my guy. That's my guy for real. Like, nobody loves Nolan Souza as much as as much as the Baumbastic Podcast, where he is an alum, of course. Let's see. Ryan Bryant says, "What's Tyler Holland's primary?" So he's really, I would say, a shortstop. Honestly, like he played some shortstop today. Him and played a little bit at left field as well. He was a shortstop in high school. Who knows? I mean, literally, I'm not kidding. Who knows where that kid's future is going to end up being? Like he played some second base in the fall as well. He played some outfield today. Played some shortstop. Obviously, he might pitch. Who knows? That might just end up being what he does. But if he had a primary position, I would have to be shortstop. But of course, you're always going to have a really good shortstop. And again, is the bat going to fully be there? Who knows? But I mean, literally, he could play anywhere. Like there's no limit to where that dude could end up. Kaysen says, "Is Aiden Jimenez hurt?" No, he's not hurt. In fact, today he got to pitch. He came out, threw one inning, gave up a home run, but then had 3 strikeouts, looked really good. I talked about him a little bit at the beginning. I understand people are getting in, so I had no issues on this. But no, Aiden Jimenez he's making his way back from an injury. He was banged up. He got hurt almost exactly a year ago, like leading up to the season last year at Oregon State. And so he's been out this whole time. We didn't get to see him in the fall, but started throwing from a mound in December, started kind of working his way back, but he seems to be ahead of schedule. He threw the ball really well today. So it's pretty solid stuff, man. Let's see. Yeah, and then Razorback Hobbs says, "It's hard to exactly know where all the pitchers' roles will be with 15 pitchers capable. Not a bad problem to have." Yeah, everybody always says this. Everybody always says, like, "Oh, yeah, we've got 10 guys that we could throw out there." And, like, then you get to the season and you're like, damn, do we even have 4? Arkansas, like, really does. I mean, they have, like, 12 guys that are, like, legitimate draft picks, like, top 10 round type of guys. Even, like, literally some of the guys that are, like, barely going to pitch this year are nasty. Like some of these freshmen that are going to struggle, that are going to be redshirt and are like really talented arms, man. It's crazy. I mean, there were some talented arms that threw today, and we haven't even seen the Wiggins, the Gibbler, Beidelshees, Root. Like it's going to be interesting. And I'll be honest with you, kind of going off this point, Razorback Hobbs. I don't even really think it's that big of a deal to like worry about. Like I understand, we all want to know who the starting rotation is going to be. Is it going to be Wood or Beidelshees getting that 3rd spot or whatever? That one I've always kind of said, like, yeah, it'll work itself out. And I think both guys are going to throw a ton of innings. Same kind of goes for the back end of the bullpen. Like we all kind of reasonably assume Fouch is going to be the closer. I think to start the year, that just makes sense. He threw a lot of high leverage innings last year, clearly has closer type stuff. But like if it's Wiggins, cool. In reality, you're probably going to need a lot of these guys to step up and get the job done in a given situation. So you just got to have all these guys ready for whatever the future may entail. And I think Arkansas's got a nice little mix of skill sets. And that's another thing. I mentioned the skill sets. Like it'll change game to game, week to week, depending on the matchup. You face a team with a bunch of lefties, all of a sudden a guy like Parker Coyle becomes pretty damn valuable. And so, yeah, I think Arkansas's got a nice way to kind of attack different teams. And then Ryan follows up with, I bet with a 4-game opener early in the season, I bet we see everyone. Yeah, I'm definitely interested to see where that whole battle winds up. For sure. It's gonna be interesting to see how if they end up just throwing all 4 of the veteran starters and they're just like, all right, Wood, Beidelshees, Root, Gackle, go do it. Or will they do what they did last year where they throw a freshman like a Cole Gibbler, or maybe they just throw Colin Fisher again. It'll be interesting to see like whoever's the odd man out in that 4-man, rotation battle, how do they use them week 1? Because if you are kind of going into the season, you're saying, all right, Beidelshees is going to be our 3rd starter and Wood's going to be our do everything reliever. Well, then do you really want to start Wood week 1 if you're planning on using him as your do everything reliever? Ultimately, it doesn't really matter what you do week 1, but I do think it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And Jaron Green says, where does my boy Taste McGuire? I think he means Tate, and he followed up later. Tate McGuire fit in the rotation, middle relief, midweek starter. Again, another one where it's like could kind of talk me into a lot of different situations there. I don't think he's going to be closing for sure just because they have guys that'll do that. But I mean, he's got the stuff to kind of do it all. I really do think Tate McGuire would not stun me at all if this time next year we're talking about him competing for a rotation spot, whether that be weekend or whatever. I could see him getting some midweek starts. I imagine Cole Gibbler, the freshman, is going to be like a very prime candidate for that. And of course, Colin Fisher also has started a ton of midweek games. Hell, Ben Bybee, we don't really know what his role is going to be. He started a ton of midweek games as well. So it's like Arkansas's got a ton of of midweek starting options, frankly. But I feel like Tate McGuire kind of fits the bill of a guy. If you're kind of using it as a, let's groom this guy for, midweek starting so he can maybe start on the weekends, I think McGuire would have to be on that list of options, but he might be someone that they view as too valuable to use as a midweek starter. So it'll be interesting to see. Ryan McDaniel says, who is the guy most likely to become a coach on this squad? This is a great question. This is a really good question, and one that honestly I don't know, because I wouldn't have told you Hudson Polk last year if you had asked me this question. Actually, I would have, because DVH said he's a guy that wants to be a coach. But like, you just kind of never know. Rocco Pepe, I feel like, is one just because he's a very energetic, enthusiastic guy. Seems to kind of have that personality. He talks a lot, hyping up the guys. Bobby Wernes-esque in that regard. Davalon also kind of fits that description. He's a very talkative guy. I don't know. That's a great question. Maybe one of the catchers, though. Maybe like Elliot Peterson, who, like, by the way, let me talk about the catchers real quick. Zane Becker is good. Like that dude can pick it behind the plate. I really like what he does defensively. Obviously Souza stole third on him, but it really wasn't on him. I was more on the pitcher on Eves there. And also Souza stole second on him. The throw from Becker was like flawless. I can't remember if it was Kogel or Frazier that like couldn't quite come up with it and get the tag down, but like the throw beat Souza there. Becker's like a legitimate, very advanced for a freshman catcher. I think ultimately, and I've kind of been squatting on this take for a while, and I think some people agree, I think Becker's going to end up being the backup catcher as a freshman. And so I don't know what they're going to do with Elliot Peterson necessarily. Maybe he's just like a DH pinch hit option. I'm sure, if they need, they'll throw him behind the plate. I'm sure he'll get some time there, but I was really impressed with Becker. And this doesn't answer Ryan's question at all. I just kind of got sidetracked, realized I didn't talk about the catchers earlier, but maybe one of those guys, because catchers I feel like are always kind of candidates to end up being future coaches. Let's see. And then Jaron says, who do you think the midweek starter is going to be? Kind of followed up on his other question. Yeah, I think if I were a betting man right now, I would say Gibbler is the guy. The reason, and I see Ryan McDaniel says midweek maybe Dietz and Wiggins or Gibbler. I think Dietz and Wiggins are both going to be back into the bullpen potential closers. I don't necessarily think now Wiggins, DVH kind of threw the other day. He was like, oh, maybe we'll start him. I think that was more just a kind of throwing it out there. And I think Wiggins next year might be a Saturday starter for you. But I think both of those guys, Dietz and Wiggins, are going to be pitching high leverage back into the bullpen, potentially closing. Gibbler could be in that mix as well, but Gibbler is more of a full on lengthy go 3 or 4 innings type of pitcher, mix of speeds, got plus command. That's his best attribute as a freshman, which is crazy. Just never would think to say that about someone. But yeah, I think Gibbler, if I had to guess, would be maybe the midweek starter. But I think Colin Fisher, of course, I mean, he did a really good job in that role last year as a freshman All-American. And then Bybee, who knows? I mean, Bybee's been kind of the de facto midweek starter for 3 years now. Yeah. Joe Racky says this team is going to run the wheels off. They definitely got some guys that can scoot. Some of their fastest guys didn't necessarily like Davalon is a guy that I would expect to have some stolen bases. He's probably going to be the leadoff guy. He didn't get on base today, but he's a guy that can cause some havoc. Souza's just a special athlete, just strength, speed, change of direction, all of it. Souza's a special athlete, man. It's going to be interesting to see if they really unleash him. Because obviously he's got a ton of power as well. And so I'm sure he's going to drive himself in. But if Souza he hit 5th today. If Souza ends up hitting 5th during the regular season, which, could very well happen, I think they will unleash him a little bit. Because it's one thing if you're, like Davalon hitting leadoff, do you really want to be active with him at the base paths when you've got Vahiva Aloy and Brent Iredale coming up next? Maybe not. But where if it's Souza and you have him in that 5-6 spot, I could see them unleashing him a little bit, maybe steal that extra base. So it'll be interesting. All these guys can steal bases. They got some base stealers, but I think during the actual season, once you face some catchers that are legit and can hold runners on, pitchers that are holding runners on, catchers that have good arms, sometimes you see it toned down a little bit. It's really hard to make a living stealing bases consistently in the SEC. But Ryan, who's been crushing it in the chat for a while now. Shout out to Ryan, man. Really appreciate it. But he says, my hot take for the season is we will be top 10 in stolen bases. He thinks Arkansas is going to be the Kentucky of this year. That's an interesting take. I got to be honest, guys, and I've kind of hinted at this before that, like, I think Arkansas is going to be better at playing small ball. They're going to do some interesting things. It's a more versatile lineup, just personnel wise. And I think they are going to steal more bases. Like, objectively, they're going to steal way more bases than they did last year. If you look at the rates of stealing, like last year during fall ball and compare it to this year during fall ball, it's like a 74% increase. Like, it's a pretty big increase in stolen bases. And they typically do kind of let them run wild in the fall, just to kind of see who likes to run, who wants to do it. My only pushback on it is that, one, this team's got a lot of power, and contrary to popular belief, they're going to need that power to win ball games. And I don't think you want to run yourself out of innings. And the SEC just has good catchers, man. Like, even the teams that, like Kentucky and Vanderbilt, who are like typically way up there in stolen bases, outside of a guy like Enrique Bradfield, you really don't see teams consistently do it in SEC play against really high level catchers, against good, guys that can catch and throw MLB prospects. So, I mean, obviously, I feel like you need that capability, and I think Arkansas's got it in their back pocket. But is it going to be like one of the best in the country? I might caution against that. But guys, I really appreciate you for being here. I did not plan on going an hour, but just kind of the way it worked out. I really appreciate everybody tapping in. We had over 100 people in here, which is just crazy for a baseball stream in late January. Just not what you'd expect. I don't know if I'm going to go live tomorrow after tomorrow's scrimmage. Maybe I'll go live again Sunday just to kind of recap the full weekend of action. We can put some numbers together and really hash all this stuff out. But you guys let me know. I answer to you guys' call. If you guys want me to go live, I'll go live whenever it is. But again, appreciate everybody for being here. Hope you enjoyed. And if you have any other questions, always throw them in the comments, and we will try to touch on them on our weekly or daily episodes throughout the week of the Baumbastic Podcast. So I think I will probably see you guys Sunday night-ish, maybe Sunday afternoon-ish after the Sunday scrimmage. If not, I'll see you Monday for our normal, regularly scheduled program, the Baumbastic Podcast. Appreciate everybody for being here. This is really awesome. Y'all have a great Friday night, and cheer on the Gymbacks as they take it to Livy Dune and the number 2 LSU Tigers. Woo Pig, beat Oklahoma tomorrow. See you guys later.